Imagine Rome in 114 BC. The air thick with incense and suspicion. A young woman, Aemilia, born of noble blood, is dragged from the sacred hearth of Vesta. No trial in the open forum, no mercy from the gods she served. Her crime? A whispered betrayal of chastity. They seal her in an underground vault, alive, with just a lamp, a loaf of bread, and a jug of water. The earth swallows her screams. She will starve in the dark, forgotten by the city she swore to protect. This is the horror of Rome's hidden prison, a tomb for the living where virgin priestesses met their end. If the shadows of ancient Rome call to you, pulling you into their depths like they do me, subscribe now, hit that like button, and share this tale of buried secrets. Comment below. What forgotten horror from history haunts you most? Together we'll unearth more. But let's step back into the flickering torchlight of the Eternal City. In the heart of Rome, where marble temples rose like silent guardians against the chaos of empire, there existed a sisterhood unlike any other, the Vestal Virgins. Chosen from the noblest families, girls as young as 6, plucked from their mother's arms and thrust into a life of divine isolation. They were the keepers of Vesta's flame, the eternal fire that symbolized Rome's unbreakable spirit. If that flame died, so too might the city. Whispers said the gods themselves watched over them, but in truth, it was the iron grip of tradition that bound them tighter than any chain. Picture it, a child, wide-eyed and trembling, standing before the Pontifex Maximus in the Forum. Her hair shorn short, her small frame draped in white woolen robes that whispered against the stone as she walked. No toys, no laughter, no future husbands or children. For 30 years, she would live in the house of the Vestals, a sprawling complex near the Regia, where kings once ruled. Luxury surrounded them, slaves at their beck and call, the finest foods from across the empire. But freedom? That was a myth. They could attend games, ride in carriages, even pardon condemned men with a touch. Power, yes, but at what cost? One glance too long, one forbidden touch, and the world they guarded would turn on them like a beast. The selection was no gentle rite. Families vied to offer their daughters, seeing prestige in the sacrifice, but once chosen, there was no escape. The girl swore her vow before the altar. Chastity absolute, body and soul dedicated to Vesta, the hearth goddess whose fire must never extinguish. Neglect that duty, and the punishment was swift, a whipping in the shadows, hidden from public eyes. But break the vow of purity? That was incestum, a crime against the gods themselves. Rome trembled at the thought. Portents followed. Comets streaking the sky, plagues ravaging the streets, defeats on distant battlefields. The Vestal's virtue was Rome's shield. Tarnish it, and the empire cracked. Yet these were girls of flesh and blood, noble-born, raised in a city pulsing with intrigue and desire. The pressures mounted like storm clouds over the Tiber. Political factions schemed in the Senate, using the Vestals as pawns in their games. A rumor here, an accusation there, enough to shatter lives. In 483 BC, amid clashes between patricians and plebeians, Oppia became the first recorded victim. Convicted on flimsy portents and neglected rites, she was led to the Campus Sceleratus, the evil field near the Colon Gate. No blood could be spilled, that was sacrilege. Instead, they lowered her into a narrow chamber dug into the earth, a forgotten prison carved from the city's ritual boundary. A bed, a flickering lamp, meager provisions, just enough to claim she died by her own will, not Rome's hand. The entrance sealed with stone and soil, darkness absolute. She scratched at the walls until her nails broke, her cries muffled by the weight of the world above. Centuries later, the horrors echoed. In 337 BC, Minutia, perhaps the first plebeian Vestal, faced the same fate. Her sin, excessive finery, a love of dress that hinted at deeper vanities. Slave testimony sealed her doom. Buried alive, her final breaths a testament to Rome's unforgiving piety. And after the catastrophe at Cannae in 216 BC, when Hannibal's legions slaughtered tens of thousands, 2 more Vestals paid the price. The city, desperate for divine favor, turned inward, purging what it saw as corruption at its core. Human sacrifices followed, Greeks and Gauls buried alive in the Forum Boreum, to appease the gods. But the Vestals' tombs remained the most chilling symbol, prisons without bars, sentences without end. Feel the weight of it. These were not common criminals but daughters of Rome's elite, locked away for life in tombs disguised as chambers. No visitors, no light, no hope, the air growing stale, the hunger gnawing like a living thing. How long did they last? Days, weeks. In the silence, did they pray to Vesta for mercy or curse the city that entombed them? Rome prospered on their suffering, its flames burning brighter for their extinction. But in 114 BC, the scandal deepened. Aemilia, Licinia, Marcia, 3 Vestals entangled in whispers of forbidden lovers. The Pontifex Maximus, Lucius Caecilius Metellus Delmaticus, presided over the inquiry. Evidence mounted, portents, testimonies, the city's unease. Aemilia was condemned first, sealed in that dreaded vault. Yet doubts lingered. Was justice served, or was politics the true executioner? As the earth closed over her, questions festered like wounds. What if innocence screamed from the depths? And what greater horrors awaited the others? The earth still trembled from Aemilia's entombment, December 114th, BC. The forum buzzed with outrage, not grief. Whispers turned to shouts. The Pontifex Maximus, Lucius Caecilius Metellus Delmaticus, had spared Licinia and Marcia. Favoritism? Corruption? Or something darker? Metellus himself rumored to have tangled with Licinia in shadowed corners of the city. Rome's elite closed ranks, but the people smelled blood. A lightning-struck girl found dead on the road, her dress hiked, tongue protruding, interpreted as divine fury over hidden sins. The gods demanded more. Public fury boiled over. The Senate acted. They stripped the case from the pontiffs and handed it to a special tribunal under Lucius Cassius Longinus Revilla, a man known for ruthless severity. No mercy this time. If these buried truths stir something primal in you, the chill of injustice wrapped in piety, subscribe if you haven't already. Smash that like button to keep the shadows moving. Share this with someone who needs to feel the weight of history's forgotten cruelties. And drop a comment. Would you trust Rome's justice in 114 BC? Let's hear your verdict. The second trial unfolded like a storm breaking. Licinia and Marcia, once acquitted, now stood accused again. Evidence resurfaced. Slave testimonies, portents ignored the first time. Political alliances that suddenly looked like cover. Licinia, proud and connected, had defended herself with eloquence, even calling on Lucius Licinius Crassus to speak for her in the initial hearing. But rhetoric couldn't shield her now. Revilla's court moved fast. Guilty. Both women condemned. The sentence remained the same. No blood spilled, no open execution. Just the slow descent into the Campus Sceleratus. Picture the procession. Dawn light, barely touching the hills. The condemned, stripped of their vitae, the sacred headbands, scourged in secret first, bodies marked but unbroken. Dressed as corpses in white shrouds, they were placed in closed litters, carried through the forum like funeral biers. Relatives wept openly, kin from Rome's oldest houses, powerless to intervene. Crowds lined the streets, some cursing the women, others silent, haunted. The route led north, past the Quirinal slopes, to the Colline Gate. Just inside the Servian wall on rising ground called the Evil Field, Campus Sceleratus, a narrow vault waited, excavated years before for this very purpose. Steps led down into darkness. A small chamber, a couch, a flickering oil lamp, a table with bread, a jug of water, a little milk, oil. Enough to prolong life a few days. Enough to claim she died naturally, not murdered by the state. They led her, first Licinia, then Marcia, to the edge. The Pontifex no longer presided. This was civic justice now. Executioners, faceless in the half-light, guided them down the ladder. One last breath of open air. Then the ladder withdrawn. Earth shoveled in, layer by layer until the surface smoothed flat. No marker, no grave. Just silence pressing down. Above, the city continued. Chariots rumbling, merchants haggling, the eternal flame in Vesta's temple burning on, fed by other virgins who watched from afar, knowing the same fate could claim them. How long did they endure? The lamp would gutter out first, plunging them into black. Air grew thin, thick with dust and despair. Hunger clawed after days. Thirst followed. In that confined space, perhaps 4 feet wide, 6 long, barely tall enough to stand, they paced or curled on the couch or scratched at the sealed entrance until fingers bled. Did they call out? Did echoes reach the surface, faint as wind through cracks? Rome never recorded such details. The sources, Livy, Dionysius, Plutarch, speak only of the ritual, not the agony. But the mind fills the silence. One woman alone, listening to her own heartbeat slow. Another, perhaps, whispering prayers to Vesta, begging the goddess she once served to end it quickly. Or cursing her. The lamp's oil lasted perhaps 2 days. After that, total dark. Starvation could stretch to a week, longer if they rationed, but dehydration killed faster. In the end, the body surrendered. This was no isolated cruelty. The Campus Sceleratus had claimed others before. Oppia in 483 BC, Minucia in 337, Floronia and Opimia after Cannae in 216. Some chose poison over the vault. Yet the 114-113 scandal stood apart in scale. 3 noblewomen in quick succession, their lovers scourged or executed, the city convulsing with purges to restore divine favor. Temples rose in response. Venus verticordia to turn hearts toward virtue. Human sacrifices followed, Greeks and Gauls buried alive in the Forum Boreum, but questions lingered like smoke. Were they truly guilty, or pawns in factional wars? The Metelli family, powerful and ambitious, tangled in the accusations. Licinia's acquittal first, then reversal, did it expose bias or correct it? Aemilia's seduction by Lucius Veturius, Marcia's alleged ties to soldiers, details murky, testimonies coerced perhaps. The trials reeked of politics as much as piety. In a republic fracturing under Gracchi reforms, class tensions, military defeats, the Vestals became convenient scapegoats. Their unchastity explained every setback. Punish them, and the gods smiled again. Yet one horror cuts deeper. These were not faceless criminals. They were girls taken at 6 or 7, molded into symbols of Rome's purity. 30 years of service, 10 learning, 10 performing, 10 teaching, then freedom at 40 to marry if they chose. Few did. The House of the Vestals offered luxury, influence, independence rare for Roman women. But one slip, one rumor, and it all vanished into a hole in the ground. No trial by jury, no appeal, just the pontiff's word or later a tribunal's. And the vault waited. Feel the cold stone under bare feet, the lamp's weak flame dancing on damp walls, the bread growing stale, the silence thickening until it presses against the ears like water. What thoughts fill those final hours? Regret? Defiance? Or numb acceptance that Rome's survival demanded their extinction? And yet, whispers persisted. Some said Vesta mourned her daughters. Others claimed portents proved innocence, flames flaring unnaturally after the burials, omens ignored. What if the real crime was Rome's fear? What if the forgotten prison held not the guilty, but the inconvenient, the vault sealed shut? But the story did not end there. The vault had claimed its toll. 113 BC faded into uneasy quiet. The sacred flame burned steady once more, fed by trembling hands. Rome exhaled, convinced the gods were appeased. Temples to Venus Verticordia rose, goddess who turns hearts to virtue, her altars heavy with offerings from women who feared the same fate. Yet the Campus Sceleratus remained, a patch of earth scarred by memory, unmarked, unvisited, except by those who knew its secret. The city moved on, wars dragged in distant provinces, consuls rose and fell. But the shadow lingered, for every Vestal who walked the streets in white, head high. The ground beneath whispered, "It could be you." If the weight of these silenced lives presses on you, if the thought of innocence entombed alive chills your blood, subscribe to join the descent into history's darkest corners. Like this video to honor their forgotten suffering. Share it. Let others feel the cold stone too. And comment, if you were a Vestal facing accusation in ancient Rome, how would you defend yourself? Your words might echo through time. Centuries passed like slow poison. The Republic cracked under civil wars, Sulla's prescriptions, Caesar's ambitions. The Vestals endured, their privileges intact amid the chaos. They pardoned men from the arena with a gesture, rode in litters through crowded streets, owned property free from male guardianship. Power wrapped in chains, but unchastity remained the ultimate fracture. The punishment evolved in cruelty's quiet way. No longer always the pontiff's verdict, emperors began to claim the role of Pontifex Maximus, turning sacred justice into personal tool. Enter Domitian, emperor from 81 to 96 AD. Paranoid, meticulous, obsessed with moral renewal. He styled himself Censor Morum, guardian of morals. Under him, the ancient rite revived with fresh venom. In the late 80s, he condemned several Vestals, the Oculata sisters, Varonilla, given the mercy of choosing death. Poison, perhaps, or the blade. Their lovers exiled, a softer hand at first. But Domitian's fury grew. Evidence thin, accusations sharp. Then came Cornelia, chief Vestal, Virgo Maxima, leader of the Six, guardian of the flame for nearly 30 years. Acquitted once, years earlier, rearrested, convicted in 90 or 91 AD. The trial reeked of tyranny. Domitian convened the pontiffs not in the traditional court, but at his Alban villa. Cornelia absent, no defense heard, condemned in absentia on charges of incestum. Pliny the Younger, who knew the error's whispers, believed her innocent. A victim of the emperor's need for spectacle. Exemplary severity, he called it, to burnish his reign with ancient rigor. The procession cut through Rome like a blade. Cornelia, no longer young, perhaps in her 40s, led through streets lined with silent crowds, dressed in funeral white, no litter to hide her now. She walked, head high, voice raised. "Is it possible that Caesar thinks me polluted?" she cried. "I who have performed the sacred rites by which he conquered and triumphed." Flattery? Defiance? Contempt? The words rang out. Witnesses remembered. She called on Vesta, on the gods, to witness her purity, again and again, until they reached the place. The vault waited, steps descending, ladder in place. She paused at the edge. Her robe caught on something in the descent. She turned, freed it with calm hands. The executioner reached to help. She recoiled, horror in her eyes. "Do not touch me," her gesture said. "It would defile my chastity." Even now, even here, she preserved decency to the last, fell with composure, the ladder withdrawn, earth shoveled, sealed, darkness claimed her. Pliny wrote of it years later, with pity, with doubt. Cornelia's lover, Sella, a Roman knight, flogged to death in the Comitium. His screams, "What have I done? I have done nothing." Echoes in the forum. The city watched. Some believed the charges. Others saw a tyrant purging threats. Cornelia's final words haunted. Did Vesta hear? Did the flame flicker? No records say. But the empire continued. Domitian's purges went on, until his own assassination in 96 AD. This was perhaps the last recorded live burial of a Vestal. The practice faded with the old republic's ghosts. Emperors grew bolder, but the rite's archaic horror no longer fit the empire's polished cruelty. Poison, exile, quiet disappearances replaced the vault. Yet Cornelia's end stands stark. A woman who had kept the eternal fire for decades, reduced to a voice in the dark. Her protest, the final spark, imagine it. The shovels scrape above, soil pattering like rain, the air turning thick, metallic, the lamp's flame shrinking to a pinprick, then gone. Silence absolute. No rescue, no miracle, only the slow unraveling of breath, of thought, of life. Did she regret her vow? Did she curse the gods who failed her? Or did she cling to innocence, a quiet flame no earth could extinguish? The Campus Sceleratus fell silent again, overgrown, forgotten. But the question endures. How many more vaults lay hidden beneath Rome's streets? How many voices still whisper from the dark, protesting their fate? The story deepens. The empire shifts. New horrors await. The silence after Cornelia's burial stretched long. 91 AD. Domitian's reign continued its paranoid march. The Campus Sceleratus lay quiet again, its earth undisturbed. No more recorded entombments followed. The emperor's exemplary severities had served their purpose. Fear rippled through the priestly orders, through the Senate, through every household that once dreamed of offering a daughter to Vesta. Yet the institution itself endured. The flame burned on. New girls entered the atrium Vestae, small and solemn, replacing those lost. The empire shifted under Trajan, Hadrian, the Antonines. Luxury grew. The Vestals' privileges held, property, precedence, the power to pardon with a touch. But the old terror receded into legend, a story told in hushed tones over wine, not a living threat. If the fading echo of those final screams still reaches you, if the thought of a flame kept alive by fear grips your chest, subscribe now. Let the darkness pull you deeper. Like this to keep the torch burning. Share the chill with those who dare to listen, and comment below. Do you believe Cornelia was guilty, or was she Rome's last great scapegoat? Your voice matters in these shadows. Time eroded the edges. The Republic's rigid piety softened under imperial excess. Punishments for lesser sins, letting the flame die, remained. A whipping in the dark, lashes hidden from public gaze. But unchastity. The vault stayed empty. No emperor after Domitian revived the full archaic rite. Perhaps the horror had grown too grotesque for an empire that prided itself on civilization. Or perhaps the accusations simply stopped. The sources grow thin. Livy, Dionysius, Plutarch, they chronicled the early cases. Pliny captured Cornelia's defiance. After that, silence. No grand scandals, no portents demanding blood. The Vestals faded into routine guardianship, their white robes a familiar sight in the forum, their litters gliding past crowds who no longer feared divine wrath through them. Yet the ground remembered. The Campus Sceleratus, evil field, sat just inside the Servian wall south of the Colline Gate. A small patch near the Aga, the earthen rampart. No grand marker, no temple. Just earth smoothed over vaults dug long ago. One chamber, perhaps, reused when needed. Steps descending into damp stone. A couch. A lamp. Bread. Water. The provisions that pretended mercy. Archaeology offers little. Modern Rome overlays the site, streets and buildings hiding what once was, but the location lingers in texts, near the Porta Collina, to the right of the road, a place avoided, a name that carried curse. As Christianity crept in, the old gods weakened. Constantine's vision, Theodosius's decrees. In 382 AD, Gratian stripped the Vestals of state funding. Their revenues, grain, land, privileges, confiscated. The flame flickered lower. No violence at first, just neglect. The college shrank. Claims of 7 Vestals in the late 4th century rest on shaky ground. By 385 AD, the last named, Qualia Concordia, Virgo Vestalis Maxima. She erected a statue to the pagan senator Praetextatus, a final gesture of loyalty to the old ways. Then 394 AD, Theodosius I in Rome. His niece Serena, wife of Stilicho, walked past an aged Vestal in the streets. The priestess, perhaps the very last, stood in her white robes, begging alms or simply present. Serena mocked her, snatched the sacred fillets from her head, insulted the symbols of Vesta. The old woman cursed her. May she who insulted the venerable rites perish miserably. Serena laughed. Months later, during Alaric's siege, she was strangled on suspicion of plotting with the Goths. False charge, historians say. But the curse echoed. Pagan writers seized it, divine retribution for desecrating the last Vestal. The temple closed. 394 AD, Theodosius ordered the rites ended. The eternal flame extinguished. No dramatic burial, no vault reopened, just absence. The atrium Vestae stood empty. Slaves dispersed, statues toppled or repurposed. The house of the Vestals became ruins, later excavated in the forum, its statues of chief priestesses staring blank-eyed at tourists today. Feel the shift. From girls entombed alive for a whisper of impurity, to an old woman insulted in the street, her order dissolved without a fight. The punishment that once demanded earth and darkness gave way to indifference. Rome's purity no longer hinged on virgin blood. Christianity offered new virgins, nuns in convents, veiled and cloistered. Chastity reframed, no vaults needed. But the question haunts. Were the early burials justice or paranoia? Political purges dressed as piety? In 114 BC, 3 noblewomen in a row, scapegoats for military failures. Under Domitian, Cornelia, victim of a tyrant's need to appear severe? And the silence after, did the Vestals learn perfect caution? Or did the crime simply vanish when it no longer served power? The vaults lie buried beneath modern streets. Perhaps one still waits, sealed, unopened. Did any woman survive the dark longer than recorded? Did faint scratches mark the walls, pleas etched in desperation? Or did the earth swallow them clean, leaving only the name, Campus Sceleratus? The flame is gone, but the darkness it cast endures. The flame was out. 3984 AD. The atrium Vestae stood empty, its marble floors gathering dust. No more white-robed girls tending the hearth. No more litters gliding through the forum. No more pardons granted with a gentle touch. The last Vestal, perhaps Caelia Concordia, had vanished into private life or obscurity. The temple doors were barred. The sacred precinct became a relic, soon quarried for new churches or left to weeds. Christianity filled the void. Virginity found new expression in convents, in saints who chose cloistered silence over public spectacle. The old terror, the vault, the slow suffocation, the ritual mercy of bread and water slipped into the margins of history. A footnote, a curiosity for later scholars. If the extinction of an entire order, born in blood and buried in earth, leaves you unsettled, if you feel the weight of a silence that once screamed, subscribe to keep unearthing these buried truths. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to remember how power once devoured its own daughters. Comment below, what modern institution do you see echoing Rome's unforgiving purity cults? Let's expose the parallels. Yet the ghosts did not rest easily. Medieval chroniclers retold the stories with a shiver. Livy's lost books, fragments preserved in later summaries, painted the early burials in stark detail. Dionysius of Halicarnassus described the Campus Sceleratus as a place accursed and shunned. Plutarch lingered on Cornelia's composure, her refusal of the executioner's hand. The image endured, a woman falling into darkness with dignity intact, her final protest against defilement. Renaissance humanists rediscovered the texts. They marveled at Rome's severity, compared it to their own courts. Some saw barbarism, others saw necessary rigor, the price of empire. The site itself faded. The Servian wall crumbled in places. The Colline Gate became a memory. Modern excavations in the late 19th and 20th centuries probed the Forum and nearby hills. The Atrium Vestae yielded statues, stern-faced Virgo Vestalis Maximae staring into eternity. Their inscriptions list names Publicia, Campania, Flavia Publicia. No mention of the condemned. The guilty were erased even from stone. The Campus Sceleratus proved elusive. Scholars placed it roughly northeast of the Quirinal, near the ancient Agger. No vault has been conclusively identified, no skeletal remains in ritual chambers. The earth kept its secret. Perhaps the burials were shallow, the bodies removed later. Perhaps the vaults were reused, filled in, built over. Or perhaps the ritual was more symbolic than literal in later centuries, poison preferred to prolonged suffering. But the psychological wound remained. The Vestal punishment was never about justice alone. It was theatre, public catharsis. When Rome faced defeat, plague, or internal fracture, the city turned inward, found sin at its sacred core, punished the untouchable. The virgin who symbolized purity became the vessel for collective guilt. 114 BC, amid Hannibal's shadow and political strife. Cornelia, under Domitian paranoia. Each time the burial served the same end. Restore cosmic order by sacrificing the symbol of it. The vault was Rome saying to the gods, see, we punish our own, spare us. Consider the asymmetry. Men accused of the same crime, incestum with a Vestal, faced flogging to death in the Comitium. Public, bloody, swift. The women? Sealed away. No blood spilled on sacred ground, no spectacle of violence, just disappearance. slow, private. The state washed its hands by claiming she died naturally, a technicality soaked in cruelty. The bread and water prolonged agony just enough to preserve the fiction of mercy. Starvation stretched days into torment. Dehydration turned hours into eternity. In that confined space, perhaps 5 by 7 feet, ceiling low, the body weakened methodically, muscles cramped, vision blurred, mind frayed, hallucinations in the dark, the lamp's last sputter. Then nothing. Modern forensics offer grim clarity. A healthy adult, rationed minimally, might last 10 to 14 days without water, longer with traces. But in stale air, panic accelerates collapse. Heart races, lungs labor, consciousness fades in waves. Did any pray until the end? Did any rage against the stone? Did any simply lie still, accepting the city's verdict? We will never know. The sources stop at the ceiling, the rest is silence. And yet echoes persist. In literature, in art. Hawthorne's marble faun nods to the buried virgin. Victorian painters rendered the descent in dramatic light and shadow. The image became romantic tragedy, noble sacrifice, unjust fate. But strip the romance. These were girls taken at 6 or 7, molded for decades, then discarded when convenient. Their crime, real or invented, threatened not just chastity, but Rome's self-image. Purity was propaganda. When it cracked, the system devoured the crack. The question deepens. If the vaults are lost beneath centuries of building, what else lies buried? Were there undocumented cases, quiet disappearances when scandal threatened too many powerful names? Did some Vestals choose suicide over the vault, as Floronia did in 216 BC? Poison over suffocation. A quicker mercy. The records are incomplete, the silence deliberate. Rome fell, barbarians sacked. Yet the idea of the Vestal, the virgin guardian, the price of her fall, lingered in Western imagination. A warning, a fascination, a reminder that even the holiest can be entombed for the greater good. But one final thread remains, one last shadow. The vaults are gone, buried under layers of asphalt, concrete, and centuries. The Campus Sceleratus, no longer a name on maps, no longer a place the living avoid. Tourists walk the forum, unaware that steps once led down from nearby hills into absolute dark. The Atrium Vestae stands in ruin, its statues headless or relocated, the sacred hearth a hollow rectangle of stone. The eternal flame was snuffed in 394 AD. No dramatic extinguishing, no final scream. Just a slow fade as the last priestesses dispersed into a Christian world that no longer needed them. Rome moved forward. The empire became memory. But the story, the buried girls, the sealed chambers, the bread that turned to dust, refuses to stay buried. If this journey through Rome's hidden cruelty has left you haunted, if the thought of voices lost forever beneath the city still echoes in your mind, subscribe now. This channel exists to drag these truths into the light, like this final part. Share it so others feel the cold weight of what power once demanded of innocence. And comment one last time. Which of these forgotten fates, Aemilia in 114 BC, Cornelia under Domitian, or the last unnamed Vestal insulted in the street, strikes you deepest? Let their names live again through your words. The punishment was never random. It answered crisis. In the Republic's early centuries, when every defeat felt like divine abandonment, the Vestals bore the blame. Their unchastity explained Cani, explained portents, explained why the gods turned away. 3 burials in 114–113 BC came at the height of political fracture. Gracchian reforms, Italian unrest, military humiliation. The Metelli and other great houses tangled in the accusations. The trials became purges, disguised as piety. Under the emperors, the right flared when paranoia ruled. Domitian needed severity to mask weakness. Cornelia's composure in the descent was her last act of resistance. After her, the vault stayed closed, not because mercy arrived, because the old fears found new outlets: exile, poison, quiet disappearance. Archaeology offers fragments. The House of the Vestals, excavated between 1883 and 1930, revealed luxury, mosaics, statues, private baths. a world of privilege built on absolute constraint. No vault discovered beneath, no bones arranged on ritual couches. The Campus Sceleratus remains theoretical, placed by scholars near the ancient Porta Collina, perhaps under modern Via Nazionale or the Quirinal slopes. Ground-penetrating radar and chance digs have found nothing conclusive. The chambers may have been temporary, filled in after each use, or the bodies removed later, cremated elsewhere to erase evidence. Or perhaps the rite grew symbolic, death by other means, the vault a metaphor preserved in texts but rarely enacted. Yet the psychological architecture endures. Rome invented a punishment that avoided direct bloodshed while maximizing terror. No sword, no arena, just isolation. Slow starvation in darkness. The provisions, lamp, bread, water, were cruelty's sleight of hand, long enough to suffer, short enough to die. The condemned knew the clock. They felt every hour slip away. In that confined space, the mind became the final enemy, regret, hallucination, the sound of one's own breathing growing louder than memory. Did Aemilia whisper apologies to Vesta? Did Licinia curse the tribunal? Did Cornelia, in her final darkness, still believe her innocence would reach the gods? The sources, Livy, Valerius Maximus, Suetonius, Pliny, record the ritual, not the interior horror. They list names, dates, portents. They do not describe the scratch marks on stone, the final prayers, the moment breath stopped. That silence is deliberate. Rome did not want to humanize the condemned. They were symbols sacrificed for the collective. Their suffering was necessary invisibility. And so the flame went out. Christianity reframed virginity, not as public spectacle guarded by death, but as private devotion. Nuns took the veil, martyrs replaced priestesses. The old vaults became irrelevant. Yet the idea lingers. In every age, when purity becomes political weapon, when women are made to carry collective sin, the shadow of the Campus Sceleratus falls again. Accusation without proof, sentence without appeal, confinement disguised as justice. Rome's forgotten prison was never just stone and earth. It was a mechanism, a way for a city to devour its daughters when it feared its own fragility. The girls chosen at 6, molded for decades, then sealed away when convenient. Their crime, whether real or invented, threatened not chastity alone, but the myth Rome told itself, that its strength came from unbroken virtue. Today the ground is quiet. Tourists photograph broken columns. Guides speak of emperors and triumphs. Few mention the evil field. Fewer still know that beneath their feet, perhaps, a narrow chamber waits. Empty now, but once filled with the slow fading of a life. The flame is extinguished, the vaults sealed. But the question remains, heavy as stone. If innocence can be buried alive for the sake of empire, what else might we still be willing to bury?